Hey there, Mr. Icarus here, and welcome to something a little different. Not sure if you're aware of this, but there's a lot of video games out there, and they just keep coming out on a shockingly frequent basis, and as a result, it can be hard to keep track of them all. I know that is certainly the case for me, and believe it or not, between playing Doom and the occasional full-on review that I post here on the channel, I do indeed have time to check some of those games out. It's just that I've been a little frustrated of late with not having a place to let my impressions of these games be known. And hopefully with this series I'll be able to let you know of maybe some titles you previously weren't aware of, or maybe just give you a better idea of something you weren't too sure about. So, bearing that in mind, the first title I'm going to talk about today is Apex Legends. Wait, no, come back. I'm sorry. Give me a chance. Seriously. Hear me out. So, much like other people, I was not aware of this title until this previous Monday, because apparently EA was terrified of letting anyone know about Apex Legends, and understandably so, because when it comes to Respawn, the developers behind Titanfall 2, fans of that studio were expecting them to be working on Titanfall 3. And could you imagine the lead up to something that wasn't that, knowing full well that they could have been working on Titanfall 3? Quite frankly, it's an inspired move. They've gotten around so many, potentially weeks of whining and deconstructing and nitpicking, and they just dropped the game and went, look, here it is, it's free to play. We know what the opinion is about Battle Royale, we know you were expecting something different, but here it is, give it a go, see what you think. And shock horror, it's actually good. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, Icarus, good, Battle Royale, surely you jest. But putting aside the cynicism, this was a game that I did not expect to enjoy at all, because for one, I went in knowing that this had mandatory 3-man teams. There is no option to play this solo. You have to be stuck with a team, and for me, I get a lot of anxiety when teamed up with new people in multiplayer games. I freeze up in a lot of situations. I really don't like communicating too much in-game over the mic, which sounds shocking for someone who records a lot of stuff on a microphone for YouTube, but honestly, it's a different thing. Where Apex Legends smooths that issue out for me is it has a ping system, which means that if you choose to, you can communicate A-OK with your teammates without ever having to utter a word through your microphone. Everything can be pinged with the middle mouse button, be it a destination you want to head to, nearby loot, nearby enemies, and there's a variety of binds that you can set in order to better communicate to your allies what you're doing or what you think the team should be doing. And again, you can push the microphone to one side, and that solves a heck of a lot of anxiety for me. But as I've played on for more and more hours, I've found that I have ultimately become a little bit more comfortable with occasionally doing some callouts over the mic. So it's eased me in on that front, which is nice. Also, another element of Apex Legends is that the teams are class-based. So in a 3-man team, you can pick from a variety of characters. Each of them will have unique abilities. Some of them will have ultimates, much like Overwatch. You can't pick more than one of a class type, so you'll always have a varied loadout for your team, and each of them will provide an interesting function. Like Bloodhound, for example, can help track down nearby enemies, and his ultimate will pick out enemies at a distance in a very identifiable way, making him a very, very formidable sniper and tracker, and just someone that's very useful to have around to keep your team on alert. You've also got Gibraltar, who's functionally a tank. He is literally an absolute unit, and he can throw down shields, he can call down barrages with his ultimate. You've got the likes of Wraith, who can phase through a dimension hole and get around enemies and flank them. There's a lot of choice here, there's a lot of play styles, but ultimately when it comes down to the fundamentals, the shooting here is very, very rock solid. And that really shouldn't come as any surprise considering the pedigree of Respawn so far with Titanfall and Titanfall 2. These guys know their shooting, they know how to make it feel good, and they have managed to translate that over to this A-OK. Granted, it's not quite as varied in terms of movement abilities. You're not going to be able to do wall running or double jumping. They've very much grounded that. You can do some sweet knee slides if you've got a hill, you can pretty much slide all the way down that sucker. It's quite a lot of fun. But from what I can tell, they have dialed down on the movement abilities because, quite frankly, it made the game a little too chaotic, according to the developers. It didn't allow for a lot of tactical gameplay because you're just frantically looking in any which direction, because if you can go anywhere, so too can your enemies, so therefore nowhere is safe. Something that I quite appreciate about how the gameplay works here as well is that if you die and your team is still active, that is not the end of the round for you. You can still be brought back. So as long as your team picks up your banner and obviously fends off the enemies that kills you, they can take your banner to a respawn point and actually bring you back in and get the squad back up to full strength. So there's always a chance to come back. And for me, that's pretty neat. But yeah, I'm thinking there's going to be much more Apex Legends for me in the coming weeks, because I'm greatly enjoying learning the maps, learning the characters, the abilities, learning which guns are best to use, which routes are best to take, which tactics work most effectively, and they've really nailed it with this one, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that it really sets the standard for how Battle Royale games can play, which is, actually good. So, with that out of the way, what's next? Pinball. Because of course it is. This is Demon's Tilt Pinball, and this popped up on my radar not too long ago. I saw a Twitter post referencing it, and I was like, hey, that looks really neat. And if you don't know this, I am a real big fan of pinball. Just in general, I love pinball machines in real life. I find them endlessly amusing to play. I enjoy pinball sim video games, and I enjoy quite a few classic arcadey pinball games from back in the day, such as Slam Tilt. And this looked right up my alley. I got it pretty much as a gift, thanks to one of my generous benefactors. Thank you very much again, by the way. You know who you are. And yeah, I subsequently became hideously addicted to this because it's doing pinball with a twist. The twist being that this is not just regular old pinball. Oh, no. This is pinball mixed with elements of shmups and hack and slash. Yeah, that's right, you heard me. No, I haven't been drinking. Why would you ask me that? But anyway, the board itself here is broken up into 3 tiers, each of which having something relatively bonkers going on in the grand scope of things. So the first tier has a hermit enemy that lurks around near the top. If you hit him enough times with the pinball, he will in fact die. But as you move on, more boss monsters do in fact spawn in that particular point, each of which getting more complicated to deal with as you go on, eventually getting to the point where they full-on start spewing projectiles at you. And the kicker with that is, if your ball hits the projectile, it does in fact rob the ball of momentum, so you've got to be on very high alert whenever all of that crazy stuff starts happening. Further up, you've got the priestess, and the way you work this section is if you land the ball in the basket on a hat, I guess, it will put her through several stages of awakening until it hits the final stage and things just go apeshit. And then right at the top of the board, you've got a friggin' chimera, because of course you have. Just, sitting, chilling out at the top there. It's a bit of a snake, bit of a scorpion, bit of a lion. You hit the lion in the mask a few times, the mask breaks, and then the lion gets angry. It's an absolute visual overload of a pinball table, and I've got to say, it looks absolutely friggin' fantastic. It's got that nice throwback vibe to it, but looks gorgeous at the same time. And oh boy, whenever I pick this up, I have a genuinely hard time putting it back down again. I mean, it follows the traditional pinball table rules. You've got 3 balls to play with per session. You've got to build up the highest possible score you can, but it's just that curiosity that gets me. The urge to find out what's going to happen if I hit the ball up that ramp for the special feature and complete all of the objectives, which could involve anything from bouncing the ball off a set number of kickers to killing all of the enemies in that section, because bonkers stuff happens as you get deeper and deeper into it. You'll sometimes see this stuff happening if you're relatively inexperienced with this game by ball 3, and it just makes you want to go back and try from the start and see if you can do better from ball 1, because then, naturally, you've got more balls to play with. I've just noticed I've said balls a tremendous amount of times during the course of this section. Oh well. Honestly though, if I had my way, we would be seeing a hell of a lot more of this kind of pinball game. Throw out the sim stuff, that's getting boring, bring back the arcadiness, because that's where the fun is, genuinely is. And the only other thing I can think of that I've played in recent memory that plays with how pinball should work and has more arcadey leanings is Pin-Out, which mixes pinball with Outrun aesthetics, a lot of neon, a lot of synthwave. It's very, very cool. And its gimmick is that it has a pinball table that seemingly stretches on into infinity. It just keeps going. It's really neat. If you check out any arcade pinball games, then, you know, Pin-Out, Demon's Tilt, say Icarus sent you. You're not going to get a discount because I don't know the people that make these games, but you should probably play them anyway. So there. Lastly, I played a bit of Subnautica Below Zero, and this is purely because I quite enjoyed my time with the original Subnautica, which I actually played to completion over on the Twitch channel. Quite enjoyed its mix of survival and crafting, paired with a strong forward drive in terms of what your character actually needs to do in order to progress and survive and ultimately get off the planet. It's something that I often find lacking in various survival crafting games. I usually get to the point where I'm like, but what am I even doing? What's my driving incentive here other than just to continue surviving? But Subnautica managed to solve that issue for me. Not to mention terrify the ever-loving crap out of me with its deep, dark depths and its leviathans and just, it's all that deep-sea terror. Got a serious phobia of the deep sea, but yeah, it did the job, and it did the job well, so I jumped into Below Zero, hoping to see a few new twists on it, and for the most part, it is pretty much Subnautica again, but with a slightly different framing device. So you have a base that gets wiped out, forcing you to fend for yourself in the open Arctic Ocean, which provides a few new interesting bits of flora and fauna. But this time you do still have radio support with like an orbiting space station, so it's a lot less you against the world and more you having a mild inconvenience related to your job, but you still got people you can talk to who are refreshingly not dead yet. And the story isn't finished. The narrative elements need to be slotted in as the early access period goes on, and there are bugs aplenty. Oh boy, when they say early access, they mean early access. There's a point that I've reached so far where I'm supposed to send some material up in a cargo rocket, and it's bugged. It's just flat out bugged. I can't use it. The game's not telling me what I need to do next in order to use it. And yeah, there's textures missing, there's bits of basic looking level geometry. If you stray a little too far, there are clearly unfinished sections still here. And if you're a fan of Subnautica and you're looking to keep playing Subnautica, I'd say stick with the first one, play that some more, and wait for a fair few more patches and updates to come out from Below Zero before you actually take the plunge on this one, because you may run the risk of being a little underwhelmed, a little disappointed by the current state of the game, especially if you jumped onto Subnautica when it was much further along its development cycle, because I know that one did quite well in early access too. But yeah, I'd advise playing it safe on that one. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to talk about for this edition of So I Played. So let me know what you think. Hopefully you enjoyed this little recap, this little breakdown of a few things that came out fairly recently. Feel free to let me know what you thought yourself if you too have experience playing any of these titles. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in supporting the channel, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, or maybe you'd like to gain early access to my videos before anyone else. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page in the description below. But until next time, this has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.